Hi, and welcome to Simple Matters, where simplicity matters. I'm your host, Don Keeber, with another Simple Matters video. In today's episode, it's titled, Who Moved My Cable? Enjoy this episode, and it's a case of cord anxiety. So this is a story about Bob. Bob is typically on top of things, but this time, Bob got caught off guard. You see, Bob just realized he had an important meeting, but his cell phone is dead. Well, that's not the worst of it. Bob has a whole box of cables and chargers, but none of them seem to be right for his device. The thing is, Bob has no idea where his charger is either. So Bob digs into the box to pull out a handful of cables, and this is what kind of a mess he winds up with. So now he's going to have to try to figure this out. And let's take Bob to school. So in this video, I'm going to briefly discuss some USB standards, the most common ones. Okay, small system portable electronics USB standards, that is. We'll look at the most common connector types and how easily it is to identify them. And we'll also review a brief chart that moderately aligns USB standards to color codes and charging bricks. In the last part of this video, I'm going to show you a map that basically loosely aligns device types with charging cables and chargers so that you can kind of get an idea where you're going to fit in with your particular device when you're trying to get it charged up. Okay, so let's work together and stamp out cord anxiety once and for all. There are many connectors and standards, but the ones that we'll concentrate on are the ones that you will be most commonly come in contact with. So you probably are going to have a cable that looks like this. Okay, and it's going to be one of these standards here. So let's take a look at what we have. We have our USB Type A, okay. We have our USB Type B and our Mini B, our Micro B, USB-C, and then we have our Thunderbolt and Lightning, which are Apple proprietary. What I've noticed is that the Micro B is probably the most common one that I see out there that's non-Apple and older in device type. I see USB-B typically getting used with music equipment and keyboards and MIDI devices and whatnot. The Mini B I find mostly in cameras, and it's used in other types of photoelectric stuff, charging blocks. Sometimes, very rarely have I seen it in anything else other than that. The Micro B, however, very common. I see it in a lot of different stuff, headphones, legacy technology, charging ports on various different things and whatnot. So very common USB type. The USB-C, which is a fairly new type, it allows us to do power delivery, and it is going to be probably the USB-C standard we're going to find out on more and more devices. So we're going to see that one, and of course sometimes we'll see Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt looks an awful lot like USB-B, but it's not USB-B. It's a little bit different. So the pins are different and it serves a different purpose. But you could easily become a little confused on the two. But I don't think you're going to run into that, because chances are if you actually have USB-B equipment, then you definitely know the difference on how they work. And then the last one is the Lightning port, and of course that's a very common port that we see on all of the Apple devices up until the recent iPhone 16 that came out. So let's take a look at cables now. It's important to remember that charging cables have two sides, the host end, or the power source side, and the side meant to be plugged into your device, or the device end. In your collection of cables, look for Type A connectors to be attached to most anything but Type A connectors. What do I mean by that? Well, the Type A connector, in my experience, is always on the host end of a charging cable. I can't remember seeing a device that had a USB Type A connector that was meant to receive power for the device. Send power, yes, but not receive power. So any charging cable with a Type A connector on one side is always going to have either a USB-B, Mini B, Micro B, Lightning, or USB-C on the other side. A Type A connector will not be there. Whatever connector that's on the other side will be the type of connector that gets plugged into the device. Look for the Type A connector cables, pull them out, find out what's on the other side, and that's going to be your device end. And we probably won't have too much of a problem after that figuring out where it goes where. The charging side end is going to go right into your charging brick, and the device side end is going to go right into your device. So you should be able to fairly easily match them up once you know that. The exception to the Type A rule on charging cables is the USB-C. A USB-C can be on both sides of a cable, and that could be a valid charging cable. The reason for that is the USB-C standard, which is being used for power delivery, allows for unidirectional power, and so that the cable can be plugged in any orientation and in any direction, and it will still operate the same way. It's a very powerful new technology that's coming out that's going to make working with our equipment a lot easier. It'll be nice to get to a point where we have one standardized cable that pretty much works with everything, and I think we're going to see the USB-C is going to sooner or later get there. It's getting there pretty rapidly. So anyway, I took a moment here to throw up some basic standard color code mappings here, and the reason for this is I want you to understand, first of all, this is loosely aligned with the way the manufacturers work with this. Apple, for instance, used that white tab brick for the first 3 standards that they've supported on their equipment when it came out. So you can't really necessarily believe this to be 100% accurate, but it is pretty close to accurate. I will call it qualitative data, so that you can use it as a reference point. Okay, and it's really just meant to show you how standards have evolved and how the amount of watts and the supported power requirements have evolved with them, and so the colors are there to help distinguish them, and that's the technology that's going to get you the support that you need for a lot of your devices, and then the power delivery that we talked about briefly already. So let's go to this page here. Now on this page here, you'll see I have a mapping, I have camera, brick, cable, I have an iPhone 5, brick and cable, I have some Samsung device and a couple of Apple devices. This is not necessarily what you're going to have in your charging cabinet, but in your tech cabinet. But the illustration is really intended just to be an example grouping, so you could see, you know, what it might look like if you had something like that. Chances are you'll have a cable that looks like one of these cables. Notice the Type A connectors on one side, and then the other side will have a mini B, a Lightning, or a micro B, or some other type of connector on it. So the takeaway here is to illustrate a possible, if not probable, configuration in your tech cabinet, and that you can use this reference as a starting point towards identifying your USB chargers and cables. Okay, so just take another look at this for a second and get an idea that what you have in here might work. You can see you got your power delivery there in the last 3 sections. Your Apple iPhone is a 45 watt device now. It uses a lot more power. So anyway, with this information in hand, you should be now prepared to be able to follow a very simple process, ABCs of putting your cables together. So let's wrap it up and see how we're going to do that. A, let's consider our device requirements and available chargers. Let's take a look and see what we have in our cabinet. Let's take a look, if we have to, let's read the book, right? They say RTFM. Let's take a look at the book and see what our device requires, and then let's take a look at the bricks that we have available and find the one that's going to be most closely related to what our requirements are. Once we get those matched up, then it's fairly easy to go look through our cables and find a cable that a host end A is going to connect into one side, and the other side, B, is going to connect into the device side. So that's what we want to do, is take a look at that and make sure we have those cables. We can easily then connect up, charge up, and before you know it, we'll be talking and we'll be online and we'll make our meetings and life will be good. So hopefully you were able to follow this video and get something out of it, and if you were, please subscribe and like, and I'll try to keep this coming your way. Thank you so much.